Marina Byrne, you are the founder and managing director of Educate Private. Could you tell us what your company does?
We solve educational problems for families looking to move their children into the independent school system in the UK. And that can be anything from advising a family who are starting their family for the first time and have no idea where to start with nursery schools and pre-preps, through to families moving into London and they're coming from a different system and need to understand how to navigate it, to families sending their children away to boarding school and helping them choose which school would fit their child best. And then the typical problems like my son just failed his GCSEs, we need to move him, or my daughter got expelled, how can we find another school that will accept them, through to tuition, assessments and just general advice.
Do you think that every parent who wishes to educate their child privately should seek advice?
Our service is really bespoke. We tailor everything to the family's needs. So even if a family has been in the UK, been through the system themselves and has an understanding of how it all works, things change and they might not know which schools have become first come, first entry, which schools are a ballot, which schools are assessment based, and what the assessment is all about. A lot of the schools change. I mean, Eton, for example, recently changed their pre-tests, and I think they've brought it forward by a year, which means that a family who might have done it years ago are facing something completely different for their child.
Right, in the old days it used to be, son is born, put the name down for Eton, girl is born, put their name down for Benenden or whatever it is. Is the process much more difficult or different now?
There are still schools that you need to put your children down at birth. A lot of nurseries, definitely, and a lot of the pre-preps. Not many boarding schools anymore, but they all have different entrance requirements. So some will be a ballot where they pick you out of a hat, some will be assessment based, and then of course some will be first come, first served. So the families really need to understand what they need to be doing. So do I need to sign my son up at birth, or can I wait until he's 1? Will there be a problem if I wait till he's 1? What will happen then? And a lot of the time they don't know any of those answers, so we need to help them navigate that.
Well, I think that what I was alluding to is that in the bad old days, people tended to choose the school rather than actually have any relationship between the suitability of the school and the child, or the relationship between the two.
I think there's definitely both happening. All families will have their perfect choice or the perfect education pathway for their children, and they'll have an idea in their heads. What we tend to do is to manage the parents' expectations. So yes, it'd be wonderful if your son went to Eton, however he may not be clever enough. So let's look at other options as well and figure out whether or not Eton is the right place for him. And we do that through assessment. We spend a lot of time with the families, understanding what the children like and dislike. There are some children who are very shy, who won't thrive in a massive school, and there are others who need to go to boarding school, others who will hate boarding school and need to be at a day school and be able to come home every day. So we explore things with the family and manage their expectations, and then always have the best choice for the family, and then a backup. We always have to have a backup.
Right, this sounds like quite a people business, quite a lot of diplomacy involved. Presumably there's a team of specialists who specialise in particular aspects of each process, each type of school or university. How does that work?
I have a team of experts, that range through from heads of nursery schools who set up their own nursery schools, started them from scratch and then sold them, through to ex-heads of boarding schools, university advisors, Edexcel examiners, and whenever I have a family in front of me and let's say the child is of university age, I'd obviously go to my university specialist to help advise through that process.
And how quickly is the landscape changing? Is it year by year now? And is it something that immediate?
Well, there are schools popping up all over the place, and I mean, in the last 3 months, I know of 3 senior schools that are opening up, and obviously that's a whole new entry process that a family will have to learn about, and obviously the school will change year by year because they're filling up their numbers as it goes along. So yes, I think it changes yearly, not at every school, but everything changes in some schools year by year, and there are 3,500 schools in the UK or more, and I don't think everyone can know everything about all of them.
These days, we are in a very crowded marketplace. Too many people chasing too many schools, too few places, and also there's the international aspect now as well. That you have people from China and India and America or whatever coming to this country to just to get educated and just to get that British process. Has that changed over the last few years, or how is that changing?
I think in London there aren't enough schools, and it's why we see all these schools opening. The preps are opening senior schools, the nurseries are opening preps. Boarding schools, the top boarding schools are always going to be, it's going to be competitive, and everyone wants to go to them. But there are a lot of boarding schools that are looking for students because many international families don't want to send their children away anymore. So actually, I think you might get a better opportunity at a boarding school with all the facilities, and the education that you get there might be better than the one that you're getting at a day school. And it might be harder to get into that senior day school than it would be to get into the boarding school, because there are just too many people wanting to go to it.
Well, maybe it's a difficult question, but the quote from Boris Johnson is that 1 in 7 world leaders have been through British education. What do you think that people are looking for, or what do you think what do they expect when they send their child to a British school?
I think there's a sense of tradition that a lot of the families want, particularly the Chinese. The idea that the schools have been running for years and years and years and have always produced a wonderful product, so they want their children to touch upon that. The education is brilliant. The children do come out and end up going to wonderful universities, and I don't think that's changed or will change ever. And then the facilities. There are fantastic facilities at these UK boarding schools that are phenomenal and are getting better every year. They do, they rebuild the science block, and they have sports facilities that you wouldn't find anywhere else. So yeah, I think UK education is probably up there at the top. So
it's advanced from my era of character building. It's not.
I think that children are mollycoddled more at boarding school now. They're looked after more. I think that whole idea of being thrown into a dormitory with 12 people on iron bunk beds, it doesn't happen anymore. It tends to be a bit more luxurious. But it's not as luxurious as Switzerland. It's not a hotel. They're still expected to muck in and be a member of the team and become independent. And I think that children going to boarding school do come out more independent than they would be if they were going to a day school, simply by virtue of not having their mum and dad there.
Well, education is an expensive process. Does that also apply to the service that you provide?
Yes. We aren't as expensive as it is going to a boarding school. We tend to price ourselves on the basis that you pay a term's school fees to get your child into the schools that you want to go to, which we think is quite fair. It is expensive, but it's hard work. It's a hand-holding process. We're available pretty much 24/7. We take the parents to the schools. We provide translators. We have drivers. The families can call us at any time, and there is no limit on the hours we spend with those families. So you might have one very easy client, and they might only call you a couple of times, but then there are the other mothers and fathers that will call you 7 times a day and ask you 1,000,001 questions before they make a decision. So I think it's expensive, but worth it.
And do you think that really, it's like almost any parent should be considering the sort of service that you provide, even if their child is a shoe-in to this school or that school?
I'm quite honest with parents. If a family comes to me they're British, they've been through the system themselves, but they might just be a bit busy and can't manage the paperwork, then I will tailor my service to their needs. I think it's unfair to charge someone for the full whack, the drivers, the interpreters, when they don't even need it. There are some families that I say to them, look, all you need is a little bit of advice making your decision, and actually you don't need us to be doing the applications and calling the schools and arranging visits and interviews. You just need that phone call. We're a phone call away. So yes, it's worth it for a family, for all families. We just tailor it to their needs.
Marina Byrne, thank you very much.
Pleasure.